your email. So what else? As you've seen by now, there's certain types of information in the industry that you may be a part of that you should not share with anyone outside of your company. These should be blocked because you don't want to just archive the fact that you've broken the law. You ideally want to prevent it. So in certain industries, as we discussed, certain roles within your company may not be able to communicate at all. That's specifically in the energy and financial services industry. Chats that may be harassing to colleagues should be prevented. And lastly, personal chats that can also lead to a productivity hit that might implicate you in a crime having to do nothing with your company should be prevented. And lastly, if you're going to put a system like this in place, you really need to warn users that the chats are being monitored for two reasons. First of all, it's going to help them remember to audit their own conversations. The best thing is for them to not say things that might get them into trouble. And unfortunately, because of the informal nature of instant messaging, sometimes people are liable to forget that it's still formal communication. Secondly, should you ever need to show an employee a chat of theirs that was archived, they would probably be quite annoyed that they didn't know they were being monitored. So it's important that you let them know. And I'll even add a third reason. Privacy laws allow for this kind of monitoring on company-supplied systems, but only if you let employees know that you're doing it, that you're monitoring their chats. So should your system find that certain questionable conversations are taking place, it's a very good idea to remind the employee that they may have engaged in questionable conversation, that they may have violated written company policy. This will keep employees auditing themselves. Also, should a chat ever, should your system ever block a part of the conversation because it clearly violates a company policy, you really must tell the employee because they need to know that the information they gave or they thought they put out never went out to the other party. Similarly, if you block the credit card number, a social security number, or some other piece of private information from being distributed, you need to tell the employee that they don't, so that they don't assume that the conversation actually took place as they expected. All right. So I'm going to turn things over to Ken now, who's going to take you through a demonstration of our compliance solutions for Sametime. He's going to walk you through a few scenarios using a live Sametime 8.5.1 system and some fictitious employees of organizations in the industries we've reviewed. First, he's going to show you our archiving solution, including its ability to capture chats in high fidelity and how to track who's been viewing the archived chats. He will show you our ability to inject disclaimers into the flow of a chat conversation. Then we'll look at an illegal conversation for a medical provider and show how we can prevent it. He'll move on to an illegal conversation for an energy provider and show you how we can prevent that. And he'll finish with an example of the blocking of customer-sensitive information, specifically a credit card. Okay? So let me just change the presenter really quickly here to Ken Gartner. And Ken, take it away.
Well, thank you, Rafael. Thank you for the long history of the IM, 40 years. It's been a long time since I've heard about Multics. Say that. All right, so I'm going to give a quick run through of the 4 or 5 points that Rafael mentioned. We'll use Sametime from my desktop. We'll communicate with, we'll just have a basic conversation with no trouble. Hang on, I've got to drag things over. Basic stuff. Now, I don't know if most of you see this phenomenon, but once people have the ability to use emoticons, and then they realize they can pick emoticons, they actually spend a fair bit of time finding unusual emoticons. And they actually, besides taking up a lot of space, are a whole time diversion unto themselves. But in any case, there's my quick conversation. There were no problems. You'll note that there was a disclaimer when the conversation started. There's an IM policy notice. This conversation may be recorded, and messages containing inappropriate content will be blocked. That's a customizable message within the system. And as Rafael mentioned, reminding people of the rules of the road are good for protecting the company, but also they remind people that this is a medium that is important, and even though it's easy and to quickly shoot off an email that's badly spelled and possibly has an edge to it that you didn't mean, it gives a moment to contemplate that before hitting that send button, just to let somebody know that someone's paying attention. All right, so let me finish that conversation. I'm going to bring up the archive. We keep an archive of communications. The 1142, yep, that would be this one. This is a view. There are a lot of icons going on, but they variously indicate whether there were disclaimers that were shown in the message, whether the message was enforcement or not, whether there were rules being checked, whether there was an image in the conversation, and so on. Right? You get the basic information that you'd expect about start time, stop time, the participants of the meeting, and so on. You can use the Domino search capability to do full text index searching if you have to find various bits of information as a compliance officer. So if we open up that, as Rafael mentioned, this is what we call a high fidelity chat archive rendition. This is, you will notice that the animated GIF is still animated even in the archive. If I was to mail this, it would still be animated at the recipient end, depending on what kind of preview you had. So very high fidelity. You'll see that at a glance, the compliance officer could easily see who joined the conversation, and we include such metadata in the conversation with a pair of colons, so you can see what was done as opposed to what the people saw. So it notes that a disclaimer was sent, and that both parties in the conversation received a disclaimer, and my conversation and my icon, and we left the conversation. So that's the essence of what archiving does. We capture the bold, the color, the images. We note whether files were transferred. So you have a pretty good record of what went on. The fact that it's searchable, and that the archive also allows messages to be sent via email to your email archiving store. So you can, as Rafael had mentioned, put both the IM and email conversations together in the same location, so that a common search engine and discovery mechanism can be used by a compliance officer. There are a lot of variations on how the product can be configured. The next item Rafael would like to show is that in the conversation window, you always have to audit the auditors. So in terms of people who have read conversations that they did not participate in, I'll go to myself, on which day. So if I'm the role of a compliance officer, there are a number of conversations that I personally have looked at, and the system knows when I open up, if I double click on one of these and actually look at the contents instead of this summary information, that will be recorded in a way that can't be removed. It's read-only. And it just allows somebody to make sure that the administrators who have enough privileges to back up and maintain these archives are not themselves looking for investment tips inappropriately. If I, just to show that, if I was to try to delete something, you can't change history in this database. It's based on domino ACL, so it can't delete it and can't change it. Read only. All right, just to go back here, we're going to try, as Rafael mentioned, a HIPAA conversation. Oh, I'm going to drag that one over here. Okay, so we're going to base this one on some content checking. Oh, it didn't do what I expected. Looking at here, I kind of expected it to yell at me about things that were based on content. I'm not sure I'm connected to it. All right. Oh, yes, I'm not connected. I think that's my problem. I was only talking to myself. Let me call this up again. Sorry for the technical difficulty. All right, so hopefully here, let me see if I can. Okay. All right. Well, I'm sorry about that technical glitch. I'm thinking there's some communication difficulty. I'm going to move on. I think I will be able to recover this before the end. Rafael had mentioned showing a FERC firewall. So two different audiences that shouldn't talk to each other. This would be say one in the marketing and one in the transmission area. So I'm going to double click on, okay, sorry, here you go. Double click on Brandy, who is a person I'm not allowed to talk to, and we're going to see that I can't even establish an IM communication with Brandy. I get a violation. It says IM policy violation. Your request to join this conversation was rejected due to a violation of the company IM use policy. So the way we have this worded now, which is customizable by your administrators, indicates which firewall. This is the FERC firewall. And it says marketing and distribution organizations need to remain separate per FERC rules. Do not IM with Brandy Marketer or with other targeted restricted users or groups. So this is, we don't have to worry about what they say in this case. They are prohibited from having a conversation. And you can specify who is in what group. You can use individual usernames. You can use domino groups and a few other specifications to make it easy to capture large groups of people and regulate their interactions with each other. Okay. Let's skip Nurse Chapel and try this. Try this again. Okay. Hallelujah. I think there was something wrong with Nurse Chapel. In this particular case, there were two problems. We have a rule that regulates keywords that are HIPAA sensitive, and we have a rule that deals with presumed social security numbers. So what happens is the person was told in very clear rich text, if we know that the communicating participants are supporting rich text, then we'll provide that. So it says it was rejected, which means the recipient did not receive any part of this message. It's not just the parts that were